Pod Adventure podcast. Today, we have a very special episode where we'll be talking to our guest here, Aron Ra, about whether a necessary being exists. But in order for this discussion to be as intellectually fruitful as possible, we need to structure it in a way where we can lay out, you know, our views on the table, define our terms, and try to understand our respective epistemic frameworks and deconstruct the opposing views from there.
Okay, now let's go to this video. In this video, you will see the Muslim apologist already is setting the stage. Okay, he will do presuppositional apologetics. He will challenge the first principles. He will try to redefine things. That's the usual apologetics tactic introduced by Hamza Georges, is Hamza Georges hiding the ball tactic. Let me give you an example to understand what I mean. Imagine a chess game. Okay, imagine a chess game. But one of the two players is always losing. And suddenly he got an idea. What if I change the chessboard to fit with my moves? Then I will win. You understand now? Muslims attack the foundations, attack effective reasoning. They want to change the first principles. And why they do that? Because how can you defend Islam morally? It's impossible. Islam contradicts every single article of the Declaration of Human Rights. How can you defend Islam morally? It's impossible. Mission impossible. So they gave up trying to defend Islam morally. Now they say, but Islam defines morality. Then they gave up trying to defend Islam with evidence. Hamza Georges used to make videos about scientific miracles in the Quran. Now he admits there aren't any scientific miracles in the Quran. The Islam is so ridiculous that you cannot possibly defend Islam with evidence. It's a joke, okay? So now they went to first principles, challenging the definitions, redefining things, presuppositional apologetics, redefining what is true, what we can really know.
So that we can actually try to get somewhere. So I guess yeah, I mean that is a difficult goal to achieve. But if we go about it in the right way, and if we sort of address the right questions and the foundations of this discussion, keeping in mind that we are coming from different frameworks, different epistemic frameworks, different worldviews, we need to try to come to as much common ground as possible, so that we can move forward with the discussion in an intellectually meaningful manner. So I guess we can start by asking Aron some questions, and I prepared some questions here so that I can try to achieve that goal. We can try to achieve that goal in the stream to the best of our ability. So I first want to ask Aron about his views. Is he a hard atheist, a soft atheist, agnostic, something else?
All right. Well, for the longest time, I was agnostic, in that I didn't have a belief in God, and the belief, and I left open maybe the possibility, but now I understand that there's not even a possibility, literally. And so, and all we have is evidence that God has been made up. So my belief in God is now about the same as your belief in leprechauns. It's not just that they don't exist, but they can't exist.
Okay, and this, like, so you're defining yourself as a hard atheist, and this is generally with regard to like the proposition for, if I give you a proposition, a necessary being exists. Are you saying that you are you believe that that proposition is outright false?
Right. There's no such thing as a necessary being. The better question is is God really necessary? And I don't even think that's a valid question. There's no indication of God. There's no possibility of God. It's just something we made up to feel comfortable somehow.
Well, okay, since this discussion revolves around our knowledge of this specific proposition I'm putting forward here. Let me ask you about your epistemology. So, in your view, what are the acceptable methods out there that we possess as humans in order to come to know anything?
We have two kinds of evidence: empirical evidence and logic. Empirical is, sorry, um, empirical is comes from empiria, the Greek word for experience. So empirical is what we see in the environment, okay, and logic. Our logic is separated from the environment, but it scales from the environment. So logic also mirrors the environment. So we have two kinds of evidence: empirical and not supernatural, immaterial, logic. Logic. You see, he's trying now. Okay, but why you went there? Why you went there? He's trying to redefine effective reasoning. Okay, so let's see.
Must it be observable? Can we infer things about the unobservable? What's your epistemology? How do you come to know things? That's going to help us know how you've come to know that this proposition is false.
There is only one way we know things, and that is effective reasoning. We see evidence from the environment, then we apply our logic, our rational abilities, but then we also need a sentiment. Without the sentiment, we compute stuff, but we don't really know them. But sometimes we have the knowing sentiment without the analysis, without being supported by solid evidence or solid rationality. Okay, for example, dogmas like Islam provide the knowing sentiment before the analysis. So, Muslims have the delusion that they know something because they have the knowing sentiment, but that is a delusion. But again, okay, what they will attempt now is to blur the limits of absolutes with objectivity. Okay, so knowing in an absolute, what is knowing in an absolute sense? So, in other words, they will blur these limits, but I will explain how all these things work.
Well, a lot of people will think that because they believe something is the same thing as knowing it, and that I call that the fourth foundational falsehood of creationism. You can't actually, if you can't demonstrate the accuracy of your claims to any degree at all, by any means whatsoever, then you can't actually know what you merely believe. So you have to be able to show that there's some truth to it. And if you can't show that there's a truth to it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's false. It just means there's no truth you can show for it. And so you could leave open the possibility, if there is a possibility to consider, but don't allow yourself to be convinced by it. You have to show me that there's a there.
What is true? Truth is something that correlates to an environment. Reality defines truth, not logic. There might be internally consistent logic, but unless you relate this logic to the environment, it's not true. Let me give you an example, okay? Take the movie Lord of the Rings. The story in the movie is logically consistent. They have a ring. This ring can only be destroyed if you throw it in a mountain, in a volcano. Okay, so inside the movie, the logic is consistent. But is it true? No. Why not? Because internally consistent logic, it needs to relate to the environment to be true. Okay, so the environment defines truth.
Yeah, but I guess, Aron, my question was more along the lines of how do we come to the conclusion that something is real or not, provided we both think that we're approaching this from like an evidentialist we have an evidentialist approach to this, that we believe we need to have reasons and we need to show that our beliefs are true. So what I'm asking you is, what is the epistemological framework you're committed to in, determining whether something is true or not?
What I just said. I mean, if you want to make a claim, okay, I don't care what you believe. All I care is why you believe it. So show me the facts and evidence that imply that indicate that is at least a possibility, and at least it should be a probability. So show me that.
But how can I show it to you when you're not giving me a means? So I agree with you in one sense that I need to show you, I need to provide you with evidence, or I need to show you that a certain belief that I have is more likely to be true than not. But then what I'm asking for is what you regard as evidence, what you regard as justifiable reasons to regard such a belief as true.
Abdul, forget absolute truths. Forget about that. Nobody can reach absolute truth. The only thing we care is reasonable to believe. And reasonable to believe equals level of claim plus level of conviction this claim demands divided by the evidence. That is the only thing you need to focus. All the rest are just mind games. You are hiding the ball. You are throwing the ball to absolutes to hide the ball. Imagine absolutes being an abyss. Nobody can dive to absolutes because you cannot prove anything in an absolute sense. So imagine absolutes an abyss, and they have a ball and they throw it on the abyss. And they say, dive now, find the ball. No. We are dealing with effective reasoning. So, you have a claim. Give us your evidence. Give us your reasoning. Okay.
Okay, so you're asking for a definition of evidence. A
Yes,
body of objectively
basically
verifiable facts that are positively indicative of and or exclusively concordant with one available position or hypothesis over any other.
How are you defining facts here?
I just said objectively verifiable data.
No, but you said objectively verifiable facts, but you didn't really
It's
define.
a bit redundant. It's a bit redundant because people don't understand. The reason I say that is because people don't understand that the word fact is already objectively verifiable data. So it's not a fact just because you say it's a fact. It's a fact when we can show that it's a fact.
Is the law of non-contradiction a fact?
I don't know if that qualifies as a fact. We put this together. We analyze the universe in properties of it, and we try to work out the laws of that universe. Well, when we summarize by a mathematical equation or a summary statement what we think the properties of the universe are, we have gotten them wrong before. So it's our best estimation.
Yeah. So the statement something X cannot be both X and not X at the same time in the same way, that's not a fact about reality.
I would say that
the confusion comes here because they blur the absolutes with objective. They confuse this stuff. Okay. Absolutes, it cannot be any other way. So the law of non-contradiction applies to absolutes only. For example, okay, this guy, what's his name? One moment, please. Jake the Muslim metaphysician. Okay, Jake the Muslim metaphysician is on your left. Okay. So, according to the law of non-contradiction, that is true. It's on your left. But wait just a moment. If you go on the other side, it's on your right. So, Jake is on your left is objectively true. And in that sense, from your perspective, the law of non-contradiction apply, but from your perspective. You need to define a constant, a frame of reference. Okay, so absolutes, yes, to absolutes, the law of non-contradiction apply. But absolutes, we might not have absolutes. And even if we have absolutes, it will be only one thing. The initial essence is an absolute. So all the rest, the law of non-contradictions doesn't apply unless you give up a frame of reference. So that is the confusion here. You are blurring. We are confusing absolutes with objectivity.
I'm certainly going to adhere to that. But if it's something that we worked out about the universe, again, it's up to human foibles. I'm going to say that to the extent of our knowledge, no, you can't be something and both not be that something.
Okay, so I
So
mean,
is it objectively verifiable?
I guess because for you, I know you appreciate science, right, and you value science a lot, right? And
Yeah.
The idea here is that science is based on certain logical frameworks and philosophical presuppositions, and the discussion about what, philosophical underpinnings, the discussion about what evidence is really a philosophical discussion.
Right.
It's
Yeah, but that is not arbitrary. We don't choose this stuff. There is no many truths. There is not an Islamic truth. We choose Islamic philosophy, but how you define evidence. Evidence means evidence. Let me try to communicate what I'm trying to say. Evidence is an experience of humans that it relates to a meaning. Even if you name evidence banana, even if you name evidence is whatever Islam says. Okay, at some point, whatever Islam says will sway away from the meaning of evidence, and people will return to the real definition of evidence. So, meanings are not arbitrary, they relate to a specific thing. Let me give you an example. Let's take the term jealousy. The definition of jealousy is generally refers to the thoughts or feelings of insecurity, fear, and concern over a relative lack of possessions or safety. Jealousy can consist of one or more emotions such anger, resentment, inadequacy, helplessness, or disgust. Okay, that's the definition of jealousy. Now you come and say how you define jealousy in your philosophy. In my philosophy, jealousy means uh, emotions of love for somebody. Okay, but even if we say that jealousy means your definition, at some point, people will want to say jealousy and there will be an emptiness in that meaning. So they will just invent another word. Okay, so definitions are not arbitrary, are not opinions. In other words, even if God comes down and says, jealousy means a feeling of deep emotion. So what? Oh, okay, that is jealousy. Now we will name the real meaning of jealousy tomato, and everybody will understand tomato as jealousy. Can you understand now? Islamic morality will never be morality. Even if you name Islamic morality, people will see somebody being executed and understand that, this is what we mean with morality. Okay, people will just not follow you, my friend. Still, morality will tune to the real definition of morality, which is related to suffering and well-being. So it doesn't matter what you are doing right now. Evidence will still be evidence, no matter what you say. Morality will still be morality, no matter how the definitions you give. Okay, things have real meanings related to our experience.
it's because you don't have any experiment to answer that question. You don't have any, you can't take me to a lab and show me under a microscope what evidence is. You need to define it first in order to regard whatever you're going to show me as evidence. Okay. So you need to have a certain epistemic framework prior to your scientific investigation in order to regard anything at all as evidence.
So where are you going with this, my friend? In other words, you are trying to say that Islam defines truth. Islam defines morality. Without God, we can't really know anything. Okay, isn't that what you're trying to say? No, truth, Islam doesn't define truth. I mean, why you are going around the bush? Just say it. Islam defines truth. Islam defines morality. Islam defines evidence. Islam, that's bullshit, my friend. That's a circular argument. You put in your premise what you want to prove. Islam is true because it's moral. And what is morality? Whatever Islam says. That's a circular argument. Okay. Islam is rational because God defines rationality. How we know it's rational? God defines rationality. That's mental masturbation, my friend. Okay, you are trying to destroy effective reasoning. This is dogma over reason. This is superstition over science. This is bringing the world back to the Dark Ages. Abdul. Okay, this is destructive logic. In your case, philosophy makes you blinder instead of opening your eyes. You are mental masturbating and you become blinder instead of opening your eyes. You don't see that. This is destructive logic, destructive philosophy. And you are doing all that because Muhammad is a prophet. I mean, I need to make Muhammad a prophet. You need to squeeze, instead of investigating if Islam fits to reality, you want to fit reality to Islam. You don't see that. You want to squeeze reality to Islam instead of investigating whether Islam fits to reality and therefore true. You are taking logic the opposite direction. You presuppose from start as Islam is true and then think, how can we make Islam true? Let's change all the world to fit to Islam. Let me give you an analogy. This is a joke, okay, explaining exactly that. There was a captain, and their sailors were shouting to the captain, "Captain, turn the wheel, we are heading to the rocks. Turn the wheel, we are heading to the rocks." And the captain responded, "No, the world is turning. My ship is going straight." That is exactly what you are doing, my friend. You want Islam to be perfect, going straight, and you want to twist, to turn the world to the direction of Islam. Why are you arguing 20 minutes about what's true? What's the reason for that? Everybody knows what's true. What's evidence? Evidence is you have evidence. Show it. You have reason. You need to redefine reason. Like nobody knows what that's. Like it's a mystery. The lost Atlantis. What is evidence? The lost Atlantis. What is reason? The lost Atlantis. One day we might find out. That is mental masturbation.
Okay.
So it's a philosophical exercise. So I guess what I'm asking, the reason I'm asking you what a fact is because we might disagree on that too. So you're saying an objectively verifiable fact, and I'm asking if you're
verifiable data.
a fact is objectively verifiable data. So the law of non-contradiction, for example, the laws of logic, mathematics, and the philosophical underpinnings of science, these are not facts.
We can take mathematics to be fact.
Okay, so your view
Would you
about
take,
these...
sorry, really quickly, would you take the law of non-contradiction as a data point? Is that how we came to the conclusion, or how you came to the conclusion about, the law of non-contradiction?
I'm not sure about the question.
So I'm saying this is that either we use certain logical axioms in order to interpret the data, which basically means it comes prior to the observation, or we're saying that the logical axioms or these logical principles come after our observation of the universe. So I'm saying the law of non-contradiction, which you agreed is generally what you accept, does it come through data,
is it demonstrable,
observation?
is it verifiable? My question about it being a fact is whether it's objectively verifiable. I would assume that, I'm happy to assume that it's true, but I don't know how we would verify that. I think we just have to assume that it's true.
So in essence, what you're saying is that you will only believe in something which is demonstrable from the point of view of empirically demonstrable. If it's not empirically demonstrable, then you can't justify it as a fact or an evidence.
I can believe that something is likely to be the case, because when I say I believe something, I think I mean something different than when a believer says that. If I say that I believe something, I mean that this is what I suspect to be true or closest to the truth, but that I don't know it is because I can't show that it is. Whereas a believer will simply say that you express their belief as knowledge and say that they know that it is because they believe that it is.
Yeah, I don't think either any of us here believes that, we should believe in something just because we claim we believe in it, and that's simply enough. I think the issue...
And yet, that's exactly what you do. The mere fact that you spent so much time discussing the nature of evidence and the definition of truth gives away exactly that. Effective reasoning is starting from a neutral point and investigate whether something is true. You begin with Islam is true and use reasoning backwards for apologetics. You are a blind cultist. You are a blind cultist with elaborated apologetics. That doesn't make you a skeptic.
Is that when we seek to analyze this question about a necessary being, and obviously you hold on to the hard atheist position that there is definitely no necessary being, the question then becomes, okay, we've got this body.
Why would it be necessary?
What do you mean? Why would it be necessary?
Why would it be necessary?
So, do you know what a necessary being would be? What that refers to?
Yes, necessary being is a term in the contingency argument that doesn't imply a being. So, just this mere fact that you keep referring to a necessary being implying to a being, you already put a being in the term of the contingency argument, when in fact the contingency argument implies to a necessary essence or a necessary existence, and you keep saying that it's a being, proves exactly my previous point, that you are not a skeptic, you are an apologist. You already inserted being in the contingency argument term. Okay, I didn't correct you previously, but now you insist. Yes, we know what's a necessary being. Do you know what's a necessary being in the contingency argument?
No, I'm asking you.
Okay, so necessary being means that which exists and couldn't be any other way. Yeah. So when we talk about a necessary being, we're saying that there's something that exists as a foundation to reality that has to be and couldn't be any other particular way, which is contrasted to something which we call a possible or contingent being.
So, it was not a being after all. So, Aron Ra was right. Why you say a necessary being? It's the contingency argument implies to a necessary existence.
Are you aware of these terms?
Yeah, I've heard them before. They're just nonsense. Because
why would you say
want
they're
so
nonsense?
badly for there to be this being that you're going to deem it necessary when it's clearly not, and not involved. Not only is it not necessary, but it's not relevant.
Do you understand what being means in this in the term
I don't
necessary
understand
being?
what you mean by it.
Well, how are you interpreting it in your own head? How are you interpreting this idea
If
of necessary
I
being?
were to define a being, I would say something that exists and also has consciousness.
Right. So in philosophy, we normally, when we talk about being, we're talking about that which exists.
It's not in philosophy, first of all. It's the term in the contingency argument, first of all. Secondly, do you want me to go back in the beginning when Abdul implied that being is God, is a conscious being? You want me to go back? I'm bored, please. That's why I'm telling you that this is mental masturbation. The term, this term, the other term, go to the evidence, my friend. Go to the evidence. What is true, what is a being, go to the evidence. You have evidence. Muhammad walked one day and said, I flew with a flying horse to 7 heavens. We need to redefine, we need to see the definition of truth to understand that unless he gives evidence, that's bullshit. Islam says we need to execute gays. We need the definition of morality to understand that's evil. We need to define the definition of morality. Come on, Ella.
So when we say necessary being or contingent being, we're talking about something that has to exist. Yeah, it doesn't give a particular ontology about consciousness or not. That's a separate discussion. But when we talk about contingent being, we're talking about something that possibly exists, or it could exist in another way. Is that clear? Because it's quite important, because if you say, well, necessary being doesn't exist, then you need to be able to understand what necessary means and also what being means in that context, regards to that. And also it goes back to the other discussion, which then becomes about evidence and proofs used to justify the existence for this necessary existence or necessary thing that must exist and cannot exist in any other way. Does that make sense? So the point that I was mentioning earlier is, if what we're saying, or what you're saying specifically, is that the only evidence that you see to justify your position is that which is demonstrable from an empirical point of view, yeah, then in essence you're saying anything that's outside of empiricism cannot be, established or concluded, even to the least amount of doubt. We're not talking about being absolutist in our knowledge or being absolutely certain, but just simply saying that we have a set of data, we come to certain conclusions. Is that right then? So that basically evidence for you, fact, data that allows you to conclude is only that which is demonstrably on an empirical basis.
We have two kinds of evidence, rational and empirical. In the category of rational is philosophy and all this kind of stuff. In the category of empirical is science and other things. Evolution predicts that our logic is limited to our immediate environment. We constantly need to tune our logic with new scientific data. Theoretical science is not a fact unless it's backed by experiments. A scientist, if he's locked in his room, he will never find truth, no matter how intelligent he is. Why is that? Because the environment defines truth, not logic. But humans don't operate always with certainty or with relative certainty. The problem with Islam is that the level of conviction Islam demands high levels of evidence. God should have known that, yet he demands this analogous conviction with the evidence he provides. Therefore, Islam refuted conclusively. Let me repeat that. Muslims, unless you take Islam out of politics, Islam is refuted. In the case of Christianity, you have faith, and Christianity is tolerant. And of course, it's not political. So that's a problem for Islam, not Christianity.
Well, I would put it another way. I mean, if you can't know something, then you can't know it. Yeah, so
So
I'm
the only way we can know something is through empiricism. That's what you're saying.
as I said before, if you can't verify the accuracy of your claims to any degree at all, by any means whatsoever, then there's no way to show what you know. There's no way to test your knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just ask a question, because we were talking about the law of non-contradiction earlier, and you seem to say that you affirmed it in the sense that that's how you use it to operate and to live by. But on the other hand, it seemed like you also said that we couldn't demonstrate that the law of non-contradiction is actually a true principle. So I'm wondering what, sort of the connection between those two things are, because if it can't be demonstrated, why are you at the same time taking it or believing in it? I guess you would say that you believe in it, but you don't know that it's true.
I'm happy to assume that it's true. I could say that I know it's true to the degree that we can't show that it's false. I mean, there's no way. How do you falsify that? You would have to show something that is both itself and not itself.
Yeah,
so we're not going to have that.
Yeah, but I mean, if
philosophical conversations are just completely lost on me. I mean, I'm waiting for the meat.
Okay,
but philosophical conversation, they just never show up.
Yeah. So, but the issue though is if you have falsifiability as a principle in order to, as you said, demonstrate something or in order to have knowledge of it, then even by your own admission of what you just said, we could never really have knowledge of the law of non-contradiction and knowing that it's true.
The law of non-contradiction applies to an absolute. Okay. But there are objective things that in order for the law of non-contradiction to apply, you need a fixed point of reference. So your scope is very wide. That's why you get confused. Okay, why won't you? Okay, you are arguing first principles. Your scope is like you are seeing Earth like this. Okay. Your scope is very wide. Okay, logic. There is logic. Okay. Now let's go to the evidence about your claim. Why you go so wide? Because if you go near, everybody will see that your claims is bullshit. That's why you are blaring. That's why you are blaring, my friend. Why you are blaring? Imagine there is a murder in this earth, and because you don't want to go and see the body, you don't want to go to see the body which smells, you go and see Earth from a telescope. Ah, Earth, we are people. We are all people. Yeah, but go and see the body that smells. Logic in general. That's why philosophy in that level, philosophy, my friend, can make you blind. Because if you overdo it philosophically, I can prove whatever, philosophical, whatever. I can make this a triangle, if I like. If I start, that is sophistry, my friend. You know who were the sophists? Sophists were philosophers in ancient Greece, that were so smart that could prove anything. They could prove the earth is flat. They were so good in philosophy. But truth is not only in our mind, truth correlates to reality. I can make arguments about dragons, yet dragons doesn't exist. Okay, guys, I don't know. I will stop this video here now because it took too long. This is a rough video. Maybe I will continue this kind of, casual discussion. Thank you very much.